The thing that undermines the South American theory is, yeah, potentially that they didn't demand a ransom. And I like, I don't know. I think to me, why would they target like Nancy's home wasn't even the nicest home there. Like there's been reporting that the neighborhood has got a lot nicer homes than Nancy. So if you're going to go in there and target somebody, why would you go to her house? And I'm sure they would have like done some surveillance of the house. It's not like Nancy was a world traveler and they could see, oh, that house is never occupied. Let's hit that one up. I think she was an 84-year-old lady who was there most of the days and most of the hours of most of the days. So I don't know if that makes much sense to me. It does make sense to me, though, if you think about where's the evidence that they left behind? Where's the DNA? Where are the fingerprints? Where are the mistakes? Right? Like that.
Right. Well, just think
But
about
then
the
I'll argue
evidence.
against myself because it doesn't look like this sheriff is the most sophisticated investigator. If I've got James, Fitz, and Will on this case from the beginning, then I have confidence. But I feel like, with all due respect to the sheriff, I don't have any confidence in him. So
Yeah.
is it that the guy left no clues, or is it that the sheriff found none, Will?
Right.
I don't think. I think the problem is they've had probably so many inquiries, they've had so many tips, they've had so many pieces of information, and we've got this undercurrent of disdain that the sheriff holds the bureau in, that he is not collaborating. There's no teamwork. And I mean, I think as you isolated just now, Megyn, if it was Fitz, James, and myself, we'd all play well together and we'd all throw in together and brainstorm what avenues we should pursue and look at. What we've got here is two separate camps trying to achieve the same goal, and ultimately not working well together. And I think the problem, just in that statement that you played a little earlier, Megyn, of what he was saying and the lack of understanding the difference between intelligence and evidence, just speaks volumes to me about someone who doesn't really understand probably anything more than just very low-level criminality.
Well, and also, James, the thing about the sheriff's statement, and I'm glad you raised this, Will, because it speaks to a lack of carefulness. He's not careful, the sheriff is. Like, we've seen him misstate facts repeatedly and then have to go back and say, oh, I misstated that. Just the one that comes to mind, but there have been many, is he said she was taken from her bed. And then he came out and said, oh, I misstated that. That I didn't mean to say that. And then, of course, Savannah came out in her statement and said, our mother was taken from her bed. So who knows what the truth is, but he's not careful. And I
Yeah.
think if this were my mother, I would want somebody running this investigation who is extremely careful. And when you're not careful with your language, you're not careful behind the scenes either.
Yeah. Well, that's what Will was saying with regards to false hope, and saying we're going to find her. Well, you can't do that. I mean, you can say we'll do everything in our power to find her. We've got everybody and their brother working on this thing. We won't stop, until we have answers. But to tell the family, that we're going to find her alive, I don't think you can do that.
No.
Not careful. To your point, Megyn, not careful at all. And I would just, back to your question about why her house, there's kind of always been two theories on this deal. It's they knew who she was, kind of your theory, Megyn. It was a murder because they knew who she was and they went in to get her by name. And then there's the random, right? Wrong play. They hit this house. They didn't know who it was. And now, like Will said, this big crap storm comes down on them. Like, oh my God. So, that could definitely be in play with regards to this criminal, burglary group. But the reason that the house could have been targeted is just based on layout, just based on, yeah, it may not be the quote unquote nicest house in the neighborhood, but it might have been the most accessible, meaning it offered the best ingress, egress, an ability to conceal yourself coming and going. And that might have overruled maybe, oh, that, house on the streets looks nicer, but they might have said, but this looks, from an operational standpoint, easier to get in and out of and keep ourselves, hidden. So you got to
But
think
wouldn't
about
you
those
think,
things. But
James, if that were the case, like South Americans, and I'm very interested in what you're saying about how this is their MO. If you look at how that guy looked and
yep,
approached the front door, but like, wouldn't we be seeing a pattern in Tucson? What are the odds that the first time they tried to do this in Tucson, they hit on Savannah Guthrie's mom's house?
Well, no, there's a lot of evidence about, operating in the Tucson area, Scottsdale, I mean, it's all over the country. It's not germane just to one particular area. And so, there are cases of these groups in Arizona. That's just a fact. So, again, did it just happen to be this first one in Tucson? I don't think so. But we don't know because, they haven't been caught.
Okay, here's more. Our pal Ashley had an interesting episode the other day where she had on a bunch of investigators and just asked them their theory. Like, what do you think happened? And a cold case investigator named Paul Holes, he had a couple of thoughts that I wanted to run by you guys. Let's listen to SOT 55 first.
Everybody right now is thinking that this crime occurred in a linear fashion. You have Nancy coming home from dinner, garage doors closing, and then offender shows up on her front porch. And then he gets into the house, assaults Nancy, abducts Nancy, drives off. Based on other cases that I've worked, I would not dismiss the possibility that the offender was inside the house when Nancy came home. And now he is attacking Nancy, getting control of her, or worse, and then going out in front with that costume on and posing in front of the camera at a certain time of night saying, "Here I am, the bad guy that came and abducted Nancy."
This guy, he was actually on our show in June of 2022 on the Golden State Killer case, episode 344. So that's kind of interesting. I don't totally understand why he'd be going out front in his little getup if he already had control of Nancy, other than to just make it look like something other than what it was. And I'm just going to give you a little bit more from his theory before I toss it to you guys. Here's SOT 56.
I think the video of him on that front porch with that costume on is so compelling based on my experience that he is wanting to be seen. He wants to be seen in that costume because he's going, this is an abduction for ransom. And I believe thoroughly this is misdirection. He was there to harm Nancy, and he pre-planned this crime to set it up to look like it's this abduction for ransom. When the offender does that, that's what we call staging. And that's because the offender, in his mind, thinks that he is likely going to be a suspect. And this could be somebody very close to Nancy, or it could be somebody who delivered something to her house a year prior. But in his mind, he's going, I have a connection to her, the victim. I have a connection to that address. And so I have to make it look like something it's not.
This is very funny because I listened to that episode by Ashley, but I was tired when I was listening to it, and I kind of drifted off for part of it, and I missed Paul Holz's theory entirely. I guess I slept through his part, and my executive producer, Steve Krakauer, who's as into this case as we are, he was like, did you hear the Paul Holz? I'm like, no. And anyway, that is very interesting, you guys, that this, I mean, if that's what this is, that this purpose is brilliant. That he was inside the whole time. This was all meant to get rid of Nancy, but then as a misdirection, he goes outside in the getup with the mouth light and the whole, like, we can't rule it out. Paul Holz is legit. I saw you shaking your head no, though, Will. You don't like it.
I'm not liking it at all. I don't know what James is going to say on it. I've always run on a very linear basis with many of these things. In 30 odd years of dealing with kidnap and ransom and missing people, it's usually pretty straightforward. You never kidnap the person who's going to pay the ransom. You're going to make sure that the person that you do kidnap is connected to someone who has sufficient money to be able to pay a ransom. It is as simple as that. I think staging this sort of masquerade outside of standing out there with the gun in the wrong holster, with the baggy clothes, with the ski mask on, I think it's too highfalutin and it doesn't sit well with my gut.
We're on vacay right now, James, and the other night we watched the movie The Others. It was, it's 20 years old with Nicole Kidman, and I'm going to do a spoiler here, so if you haven't seen The Others, you might want to turn down the sound. But it's about Nicole Kidman raising her kids in this creepy house that's haunted, and they're having to deal with ghosts all the time. They don't know what this is, and the kids say, "Oh, I see a little boy," and she's like, "There's no little boy. You're weird. What's happening?" And at the end of the movie, you find out that, here's the spoiler, she and the children are the ghosts, and the alleged ghosts they're seeing are the real people who have moved into the house. This is that level twist. If that's like, this guy is a setup and not at all like there to abduct Nancy, but really just there to throw us off and make us think that there maybe is like a South American or some other kind of connection. And really, this whole thing was a murder that's happened inside the house from a guy lying in wait who's very clever and has maybe been watching a lot of true crime.
Yeah, I'm with Will. I don't buy any of that. I think it's interesting, but why would you put the get up on? I think the investigator's theory was that he wanted to be caught. Well, if he wants to be caught, then take the mask off and expose yourself. The actions on the porch, the more you look at the cup of the hand and Will explaining the light, to me, it just looks like the guy's trying to see, is the jammer not working? And I want to see, yeah, right there he's cupping that thing to see the light in the camera to see if the thing is on or not. That's what it looks to me like. That's what he's doing with the flowers. It's, trying to see, am I getting any type of light from the motion detector? To me, that makes complete sense if they don't think their jammer is actually working. But as far as him waiting inside while, for her to get home, that you'd have to know a lot.
Think about this. In 2006, $20,000 equaled roughly 33 ounces of gold at spot price. At today's prices, those 33 ounces would be worth about $165,000. That's why many smart Americans diversify a portion of their savings into precious metals. And it's why you should consider buying gold from Birch Gold Group. For thousands of years, gold has been a store of wealth, and today it's a crucial part of any balanced strategy. Even better, Birch Gold can help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered retirement account in gold. Just text MK to the number 989898 to receive your free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold help you diversify with gold. Now that's peace of mind. Again, text MK to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.